This week, we've got questions on saintly families, the Dark Ages, and is it illicit for a Catholic to shoot a crossbow at a fellow Christian? Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu, now being broadcast and podcast on the Crusade Channel. Talk radio the way it should be at crusadechannel.com. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a vernal Charles Coulombe.
Vernal? You mean spring?
Yeah.
Springtime is here. Springtime is sprung. I mean, if you think about it, last week was Pentecost. We're just chock-a-block with holidays. I mean, Friday was Empire Day. You celebrated, I presume.
Yeah, yes.
Today, for reasons known only to gentlemen in Edinburgh, was King Arthur Day.
Wow.
Tomorrow, yeah. But Monday is that most joyfulest of American holidays. It's not really joyful. Memorial Day.
Right.
But we honor all of the glorious dead who gave their lives for these United States and their possessions. And it is also the week between Pentecost and Trinity. And you know why that's important?
Why?
What is the Thursday after Pentecost?
The Thursday after Pentecost is, you got me. I don't know.
Thursday after Pentecost is Corpus Christi, the feast of the body of Christ, which is on Thursday. In crazy, stupid, idiotic run places, they move it to the Sunday. But in the real world, it's on the Thursday.
Yeah, I guess it's because we had Easter so early this year. I'm used to Corpus Christi being more solidly in June.
Yes, it usually is.
Yeah.
But this year it's early. It comes early. And because it comes early, in the good old days, prior to 1955, for all of our Restore the 54 pals, you'll dig this. The octave of Corpus Christi is, of course, the following Thursday. The day after the octave of Corpus Christi is the Feast of the Sacred Heart.
Right.
And this ushers us into June, of course, because, as we know, June is the month of the Sacred Heart. And we also know, whether we want to or not, June is the month of the Sacred Heart. June 10th is White Rose Day, the great Jacobite day. Then will come St. John's Eve on June 23rd, Halloween in summer. St. John the Baptist Day on the 24th. On July 1st, a triple header. The Feast of the Precious Blood, ushering in, oddly enough, the month of the Precious Blood. It's also the Feast of St. Junipero Serra. And if that weren't bad enough, it's the day my father died. And it's Dominion Day.
Wow.
So we got a whole lot of holidays coming up, ladies and gentlemen. So you better get ready to celebrate, each of them in their own particular and different ways. Starting, because you will actually be seeing this on Memorial Day. Are you going to go to a VA a veterans cemetery?
I actually don't even know where one is over here.
Oh, there's one in Riverside.
That's a hike.
Well, all right, fine. You know what I'm going to do for you? Because I wouldn't do this for most people. Memorial Day, Arcadia, CA. Oh, boy. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, you are in for a good time indeed. Arcadia, California. Oh, that's 2021. Well, apparently back then they turned the county park there in the center of town. They turned it into a field of
No,
flags.
they always do that. No, I just drove past it. And you can sponsor a flag. It's there. Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice. There's a ton of
Yeah.
flags.
Okay, well, that's one thing that's going on, but wait, there's more. Let's see what else we got going. This weekend at Santa Ana Park, they've got Smorgasburg Barbecue International and Memorial Weekend Carnival at Santa Ana Park.
Yeah, you're talking about the racetrack? Are you talking about the county park or the racetrack?
It says Santa Ana Park. I guess that means the racetrack.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, I don't know. And then Matt Denny's is having the Free Wing Memorial Weekend Reunion Party. I don't know what Free Wing is, but whatever they are, they're getting together again.
Probably buffalo wings.
That could be. There's, gosh, that's pretty much it in Arcadia. But one thing you'll be able to do is go down to Forest Lawn in Glendale. And they are having, as always, a big, yep. Forest Lawn is once again putting out a big deal. In all of the Forest Lawns, in fact, at 10. And then in Glendale, the big one is at 11, with the Forest Lawn commemoration beginning at 1 p.m. So, yeah, you're going to be in for, if you go to the thing in Glendale, you're really going to have a Memorial Day to remember. I used to do it when I was living there, you know.
I believe it. I mean, you love that place. The Disneyland of Death.
That, yes. That's exactly what it is. The Disneyland of Death. Yes, it is. So this is what they tell us. All right. Okay. Memorial Day, May 27, 2024. Okay. Varies by location. Click here to choose the location. Glendale at 1 p.m. That's the big one. Okay, here are the highlights. Monday, May 27th, 2024, 1 p.m., Forest Lawn, Glendale, all you Angelinos out there. Event will be held near the Little Church of the Flowers, 1712 South Glendale Avenue, Glendale, California. There'll be a keynote address, patriotic music, an invocation, ceremonial wreath presentation, pledge of allegiance, color guard, and presidential proclamation. Free admission and parking. And I can also tell you from days gone by, you'll have free water as well.
What are you going to do?
What, me?
Yeah.
For Memorial Day?
Yeah.
Well, I will wear an American flag on my lapel pin, on my lapel, rather. I will remember our honored dead at Mass in the morning. And then I will go up to Vienna and pray by the tomb of the unknown soldier of World War I.
Oh, right. That's interesting. Could you tell us more about that?
About praying for the unknown soldier?
No, the unknown soldier
himself. Well, sure. Most countries, including the United States, Austria, Germany, France, Britain, etc., Russia, have an unknown Italy have an unknown soldier of World War I, sometimes several. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Romania, they all have them. Uh, and usually the place where these unknown soldiers are is a sort of shrine. In the United States, it's at Arlington National Cemetery. In London, it's Westminster Abbey. Paris, it's the Arc de Triomphe. Italy, it's the Vittorio Emanuele Monument. Germany, it's the Neue Wache in Berlin. In Vienna, it's what's called the Heldentor, the Heroes Gate outside the Imperial Palace, the Hofburg. And basically, the interior was turned into a sort of chapel. And in the middle, there's an altar at the rear of it where Mass is said. And then in front of that is what looks like uh, an Austrian infantry soldier reclining, only he's made of bronze. And under him is the body, which of course you don't see. There are candelabra on either side, and then on the wall on either side, there are two plaques. The one is to the first victim of World War I, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and the other is to the last victim of World War I, Blessed Kaiser Karl.
That's interesting to think of it in those terms.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, see, the funny thing is, we have 3 days in the United States where we remember the military. There's Armed Forces Day, which honors the serving military. There's Memorial Day, which actually owes its origin to our Civil War, and that honors the dead of all of our wars. And then Veterans Day is basically derived from Armistice Day, which was the end of World War I. But today in America, the United States, that honors all people who have ever served. Now, it's connected to Remembrance Day in the British Commonwealth, which is like Memorial Day here. They honor the dead, the war dead, and there, as here, the symbol of remembrance is the red poppy. In France, it's the blue cornflower, which they call the Bleuet de France. And then Germany, it's the Vergessmeinnicht, which is the forget-me-not. And in Austria, it's the Edelweiss. So, you know, there's a beautiful picture I've seen which entwines the poppy, the cornfield, and the forget-me-not all together. And so that's how I remember the dead. If I were staying with Axel and Christian in Aachen, there are several American veteran cemeteries to go to, and they all have ceremonies on Memorial Day. I think there'll probably be a ceremony of some kind at the embassy, but I don't go to the embassy if I can avoid it, because it always has the rainbow flag.
Oh, right.
And that, to me, kind of takes away from the solemnity of the occasion. So that's what I'll do for Memorial Day.
All right. Anything else before we start the questions?
Well, yeah. I did a podcast for Conor McHugh today in honor of King Arthur Day. Why it's King Arthur Day, I don't know. I think it was just declared that way by Nathan Hood. Nevertheless, he's put out some really good podcasts, and other people did too, to celebrate. But I spoke about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and J.R.R. Tolkien. I really love King Arthur, you know, the whole thing and all the influence he's had on our culture and everything else. It's good stuff.
On this culture?
Yeah, sure.
How has he influenced the culture?
You ever held the door for a lady?
So you're ascribing. Oh, okay. I mean, wouldn't chivalry exist without King Arthur?
Probably, but he really was the focus of the cultus, although Charlemagne and Godefroy de Bouillon were also important.
Okay. All right. Let's do some questions, Charles.
Are you sure? I mean, do you really? I don't know. Where are we going with this? I mean, who are we really? Where are you coming from? I mean, what I want to know as a Californian is what's it all about?
Wow, you really seem disoriented right now.
Well, I don't look Chinese.
What did you
I've
say?
lost my Asian heritage. I don't look Chinese. I've lost my Asian
Disoriented.
heritage.
No, that's very cute, but okay. Yeah, I guess you've lost your Asian heritage. Okay. All right.
Fine. Let's answer some questions. I don't care.
All right. Will says, hi. Will Charles speak about how the Protestant Reformation occurred in Sweden?
Yes. Basically, what happened in Sweden was very, very, very interesting. Sweden, up until the 1520s, was part of what was called the Union of Kalmar. Back in the 1300s, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark were united under one ruler, the King of Denmark, and uh, there was a Swedish insurrection that broke out against the Danes, led by a man named Gustavus Vasa in Sweden, and he made himself King of Sweden. Well, he sided with the Lutheran Reformation, so-called, was exploding at that point, and he had just taken over the country. The coffers were empty, and the idea of being able to seize all the monastic lands appealed to him very much. So he did. Now, there were a number of popular rebellions against his doing so. David Dacke's rebellion, the Dalakarian rebellion, the Smaland rebellion. These were all eventually put down with a great deal of loss of life, but it wasn't very happy making. So, nevertheless, once he was in control of the church property and all that, Vasa didn't really change the internal constitution of the Church of Sweden too much, which is why, until they began ordaining bishopesses and priestesses in the 60s, the Church of Sweden was able to claim and have the apostolic succession. Now, mind you, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Rome never ruled on it, but now Rome doesn't have to worry about it because the bishopesses and priestesses. However, the changes in Sweden were extremely conservative. Vasa's grandson, King John III, was a real Catholicizer like Charles I, and toyed very much with the idea of reuniting with Rome. His son, Sigismund, was an outright Catholic, and also inherited, in addition to Sweden, the throne of Poland. So it looked as though he might re-Catholicize Sweden, but his uncle was not keen on that happening, so there was a civil war, and Sigismund's forces were defeated, and he had to withdraw into Poland. And so, with that, the Reformation, so-called, was completely victorious in Sweden. But there's still a number of saint shrines around, including that of St. Eric IX, the first Catholic king of Sweden, which you could venerate in Uppsala. Although the liturgy is in Swedish, it's very conservative. And all in all, Swedish Lutheranism has a lot of resemblances to Anglicanism. So there you go.
Okay. Vonday Radio says, Dear Charles, please could you comment on Spain's 19th century history? which, like France, was so turbulent after the loss of its organic Catholic constitution?
Sad but true. Well, basically, after 1815 and the end of the Napoleonic Wars, the King of Spain was a man named Fernando VII, who did one of the most important things any 19th century monarch ever did.
What?
He founded the parish of Our Lady of the Angels in downtown LA,
Hmm.
the Plaza Church. But it was under Fernando that the Latin American rebellion started. And he himself faced rebellion in 1820, which was put down with the help of French troops. But Spain was the Napoleonic Wars have been horrible in Spain, and the loss of the American colonies was a terrible, terrible trauma. In the meantime, he had about 4 wives, each of whom died without giving him an heir until the last one. Now, as a Bourbon, he was covered by what was called the Salic Law, which meant that only a man could inherit the throne. He had no children, but he had a brother, Don Carlos, who was, ready to accept it. But then he married again the 4th time, and he managed to have a daughter. So he said, I'm changing the law of succession, so my daughter can be the reigning queen of Spain. Too bad for you, brother mine. Well, his brother did not accept that. So when he died and his daughter was acclaimed Queen Maria the First of Spain, Don Carlos was proclaimed King Carlos V of Spain, and a civil war ensued, the first of the Carlist Wars.
That's kind of frustrating a little bit because I feel like, couldn't you deduce that by trying that, you're going to create a civil war? And everyone's going to die? I just don't understand that one.
It was not smart. But it's important to remember, though, that the two sides were not, it wasn't a question just of genealogy, but of what kind of monarchy Spain would have. So Maria's backers were kind of anti-clerical. They wanted to de-Catholicize the country, be a bit more secular, and all that. Don Carlos wanted a traditional Spanish monarchy with Dios, Patria, Fueros y Rey, which meant the God and the Church coming first, the old Constitution of Spain, the local liberties, and of course a real king. Whereas Maria's supporters wanted a liberal monarchy like England, and that's what the fight was really about. They were defeated in the 1830s. Maria reigned as queen, then she died, and her daughter succeeded her, Isabella II. And she ruled for some years. In the 1850s was another brief Carlist War. But then in 1867, there was a revolution in Spain, and the queen herself was driven out. So they tried a republic. That didn't work very well. They invited a Sardinian prince from Italy to be king. He ruled for about 3 years, and that didn't work very well either. He resigned, and then there was the Third Carlist War, another attempt to retake the throne. The Carlists were defeated, and this time, the son of Isabella II became king, Alfonso XII. Unfortunately, he died young. His son was very, very young, and so the son's mother was regent. So this was not very good. And then what was left of the Spanish Empire was taken from them in 1898, where the United States picked a fight. This was a terribly unjust war. We picked a fight over Cuba. We defeated them, and we seized the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico, and occupied Cuba. So Spain was in a very, very bad way in 1898 and closed out the century extremely unhappy.
All right. The members of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux's entire family were canonized, beatified, or declared venerable. Are there any other families which had so many of their members so honored by the church?
Well, the Martins, of course, Saint Teresa's family. And then in the early days, there were whole Welsh royal families that were virtually everybody seemingly was a saint. I really can't. I really can't think of any others, but I'm sure that what's that?
That's interesting. I mean, you've named some sort of anonymous families that I feel that's like an incredible accolade that is kind of overlooked.
Well, like for instance, I'll give you an example of who I mean. There's a website called Early British Kingdoms, and they have the saints. Let's see. They have the saints. There we go. Saint Brigham, King of Branichiag, born AD 419. He married 3 times and had so many saintly children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12. I mean, he had a number of saints in his family. But that was, as I say, Saint Brechan.
In 419?
Yeah, born AD 419.
Oh, okay. I didn't know Wales was a thing back then.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
It was a refuge for Britons fleeing the Saxons. As was Cornwall, Cumbria, and Brittany.
I see. Okay, that makes sense then. All right, what does Charles think of the miracle of St. Menas at the Second Battle of El Alamein? Are there enough eyewitness accounts to confirm that St. Menas appeared to the German forces on the night before the battle, and that this contributed to the British victory? Huh.
Well, yeah, there was a disused chapel of St. Menas at the tail end of the battlefield, and some of the Allied troops who were close to it prayed to St. Menas for victory, which at the moment did not look likely, but they got it. And so, eventually, St. Menas's ruined monastery was restored to its current beauty.
The way that's written seems unusual to me, because it says Saint Menas appeared to the German forces. So Saint Menas appeared to the side that was going to lose.
It lost. Yeah.
So how does that work?
He frightened them.
He frightened them. What does that look like?
I wasn't there. I can't tell.
That's an unusual. I mean, that's like a Raider.
It's what the Germans said they were frightened by him. That's all I can tell you.
That's like a Raiders of the Lost Ark situation. That's where my mind immediately goes to, the end of the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. And now it gets put in the storage bin with everything else.
Don't look at it. Yeah. Wow. All right. Which American-born male Catholic does Charles want canonized? What does Charles want canonized the most? I see the names Father Emile Capon, Joseph Dutton, the famous assistant of St. Damien of Molokai, Solanus Casey, and Captain Leonard LaRue come up most often.
I'd say probably Father Capon, but I'd be happy for any and all of them.
What's okay, so Joseph Dutton, the famous assistant of Damien. I actually read Spirit of Damien, which was a very good book. That was obviously about the work on Molokai, the leper colony.
Well, you went to Damien High.
And well, of course, I went to Damien High, so I'm big on that. What are some of these other names? Can we go through some of these names and just say what their situation is? So Solanus Casey.
Well, Solanus Casey was an Irish Franciscan, an Irish American in Detroit, and he had a reputation for holiness, and all sorts of people went to him for advice, a bit like Saint Andre Bessette in Quebec, in Montreal. So he was, and actually roughly the same era too, the 20s and 30s and 40s of the last century. So, I would definitely say that he would certainly be interesting. Who else do you have?
Captain Leonard LaRue.
Now, I must admit, I don't know anything about him. So let's see. Was the captain of a ship, later known as Brother Marinos, was the skipper of the SS Meredith Victory. It evacuated over 14,000 refugees to safety. And then after the war, he became a Benedictine monk. So he gave up a prestigious career to become a monk. He died in 2001.
Okay. What about? So you said Emile Capon. What is he known for?
Yeah. Well, he was an army chaplain who was captured in the Korean War by the communists, and basically gave his food and other things to keep other prisoners alive. Offered them the mass, and even though it was illegal, he, did a very abbreviated version of it. But he basically labored in the prison camp until he died himself.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's a book on him by Ignatius Press, maybe published, I don't know, 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is. Yes, there's a lot, and there are websites for his canonization and all that.
All right, John says, how does Charles feel about the term Dark Ages, and how dark were they really?
He thinks it's a load of bull. It's like Austrofascism. It's like dead white European male supremacy. It's like white privilege. It's like, shoot me now before I say anything more because I'm stupid. It's like that.
Well, you don't like the term Dark Ages?
No, because they were called the Dark Ages primarily to show how much smarter and more wonderful the Renaissance was.
Was the Renaissance smarter?
Than what?
The Dark Ages.
No.
Why?
For one thing, it was losing the faith slowly but surely, whereas the Dark Ages were becoming ever more confirmed in it. So that by itself is kind of a giveaway. But no, the Dark Ages, it's where we get a lot of our heroes of song and story. A lot of the early apostles to the different European countries, St. Boniface, people like that. So many wonderful abbeys and monasteries founded, so many cities renewed. No, I think it's wonderful.
What do you think?
These are the Dark Ages that we're living in now.
What would you term? What's a better term for the Dark Ages? Like, what term should people use?
Early Middle Ages.
Early Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Okay. Early Middle Ages. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
What time frame are we talking about specifically here? What is this encompassing?
I'd say the fall of Rome to 1000.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got one final question this episode. It's from Xenix, who says, "Hail, O Californian Caesar and Gilbertian geezer."
Ooh.
That's okay.
I can deal with that.
Would Charles finally clear the rumors? Referring, of course, to whether it's still illicit for a Catholic to shoot a crossbow at a fellow Christian. How do we determine if specific condemnations of the church on such things, as the former example, and say dueling, are still in effect? I think that's fascinating that he is asking whether it's illicit rather than sort of sinful. So can you talk about the difference there first?
Well, yeah, illicit means it's illegal according to canon law.
Yeah.
Sinful means something is a sin, objectively speaking.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about the Code of Canon Law is that it takes into account subjective thinking, which civil law does not. So that's why there's so many punishments listed in canon law. But they're totally void depending on what your motivation was for doing the deed that normally would get you excommunicated or suspended or whatever. So, I really couldn't tell you. I don't know. I can't help myself.
Well, I feel like we've answered this question regarding dueling before. Right? I thought there's a condemnation in there about dueling.
There is, but we prohibit under anathema that murderous sport of crossbowmen and archers, which is hateful to God, to be employed against Christians and Catholics from now on. That was in 1139. But I really don't know whether or not it was ever rescinded.
Okay, that's unusual. Okay, 1 second. All right, I'm going to grab impromptu 1 or 2 more questions here because we're really what are you doing? What do you mean, what
am I doing?
You're moving in a strange way.
Am I?
Okay.
I'm pre-answering the new questions in interpretive dance.
Ah, okay.
Without getting up from my chair, though.
All right. Let's see. All right. We'll just take something someone submitted through the website from Rolando. He says, in New Orleans, Louisiana, there is a legend that Our Lady of Prompt Succor interceded at the Battle of New Orleans in 1815. The legend goes that many faithful, including wives and daughters of American soldiers, gathered in the Ursuline Chapel before the statue of Our Lady of Prompt Succor and spent the night before the battle in prayer. They asked Our Lady for victory by Andrew Jackson's forces over the British, which would save the city from being sacked. Jackson and 200 men from around the South won a remarkable victory over a superior British force in a battle that lasted 25 minutes and saw few American casualties. What are your thoughts on this? It seems a bit odd to me.
Well, it doesn't seem odd to me. Obviously, none of the British were going to be praying to Our Lady for victory, whereas an awful lot of the population of New Orleans was Catholic. So, and they were used to getting miracles, and that continued again. Also, I don't know if the British would have sat New Orleans, but a little bit earlier, the previous year, in response to the American burning of Toronto in 1813, they burned Washington D.C. So there was a great deal of fear they would do the same to New Orleans. But no, I don't have any trouble with the story, and in fact, it's why Our Lady of Prompt Succor is in fact the patroness of the state of Louisiana.
Wow, I've never heard of that. Huh.
Yeah, I think the chapel of Our Lady of Prompt Succor is
Well, how did
still
so that's an apparition that originally like
no.
what is that?
Well, the National Shrine of Our Lady of Prompt Succor will tell you that it's 100 years old this year, 1924. So basically, this is the story. In 1803, Mother St. Andre Madier, one of the 7 nuns who remained, appealed to her cousin at Ursuline in France, who the Reign of Terror had forced to leave her monastery at Pont Saint Esprit. She was Mother Saint Michel Chansoul, a remarkable woman of great talent and interior piety, who during the exile at Montpellier opened a boarding school for girls there. Fearing for the flourishing school, Bishop Fournier refused to request her leave, saying that only the Pope, then a prisoner of Napoleon, could give such permission. One day, while praying before a statue of the Blessed Mother, she was inspired to say, O Most Holy Virgin Mary, if you obtain a prompt and favorable answer to my letter, I promise to have you honored in New Orleans under the title of Our Lady of Prompt Succor. Since the end of December 1810, when Mother Saint Michel and her companions of the statue arrived in New Orleans, devotion to Our Lady of Prompt Succor has grown in New Orleans and Louisiana and has spread throughout the United States and even beyond. Now, there have been 2 interventions of Our Lady in particular from early New Orleans, important to the city and the people. The first has to do with one of the great fires which periodically threatened the city, the Ursuline convent included. On Good Friday in 1788, frightened residents joined the sisters at the convent chapel, begging Our Lady to save them and their homes from the raging wind and flames. Within minutes, the wind turned back on itself, and in a short time, the fire had lost its momentum and burned out, leaving the convent unharmed, while nearly 800 buildings in the city were destroyed. The second well-known intervention of Our Lady of Prompt Succor concerns the Battle of New Orleans, January 8, 1815. General Andrew Jackson arrived to defend New Orleans on January 23, 1814. He urged the residents and sisters to evacuate for fear that the recent burning and pillaging of Washington, D.C. by the British Army would also take place in New Orleans, a key port of entry to the mighty Mississippi River. When the sisters refused to leave, citing the needs of those whom they served, the general asked them to pray, at which time they began an all-night vigil of prayer. During the night of January 7th, Andrew Jackson and his relatively small, little-prepared and ill-equipped band of soldiers organized their defenses against the large, very well-equipped British army, which would attack the city before dawn. At that time, many citizens not directly involved in the army joined the Ursuline sisters in their all-night vigil in their chapel on Chartres Street, imploring Our Lady of Prompt Succor to give the victory to Jackson for the United States, saving the city of New Orleans from British control. During the night, the Ursuline Superior, Mother Saint Marie Olivier de Vinzin, promised Our Lady that if Jackson and his men were victorious, a mass of thanksgiving would be sung every year in memory of her saving help in the city on that day. As the dawn was breaking, Bishop Dubois began a mass for the same intention. At the very moment of communion, a courier rushed into the chapel, announcing that Jackson and his men had won the battle, and the chapel rang out with the joyous singing of the Te Deum. Following the battle, General Jackson wrote a letter to Bishop Dubois, calling for a gathering of all citizens to give thanks for, quote, the great assistance we've received from the ruler of all events. So I don't see a problem with it.
All right. This is the same Andrew Jackson, right? Like, this is the Andrew
annoying
Jackson.
one, yeah.
The annoying.
Only the one. The annoying one.
That's what made it a little confusing that Our Lady helped Andrew Jackson.
She was helping everybody else. Specifically withheld her help from him. It was all right.
All right, very good, Charles. All right, kind of a short episode this week, but if you didn't get enough, there's still the pre-show for all you people who aren't patrons. Get another 35, 40 minutes of Charles. Get your fix for as low as $5 a month.
And remember, the more you buy, the more you save.
That the more you spend, the more you save at TumblerHouse.com. Yes, we were talking about this, like trying to give good financial advice. I was saying you guys don't need to open savings accounts. Just buy books at the Tumbler House bookstore if you want savings. Send
the money in, or stop by the gift shop. We've got a special on toasters and television sets. And what was the other one? Oh, yeah, the microwave ovens. There's a whole bunch of microwaves that just showed up. So they're all in the gift shop, and they all are stamped with the Tumbler House logo. So you know where they came from. We also have a bunch of towels, but for some reason they all say Holiday Inn on them. I don't know what that's about.
That was, I think, a manufacturing error. Yeah, so... Right. All right. That'll do it for this episode. What is it if it's Monday, Charles?
Well, this year it's Memorial Day, this month, but I would say that if it's Monday, it's off the menu.
And what about the soul you save?
It may be your own.
See you next time, everyone.
God bless you all. And say a prayer that Vinny's power stays on.